pleasure to see everyone here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bill Moore. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Golf Association. Hold your applause till later. And it's a pleasure to have everyone here. This is our favorite night of the year, to have everyone come back. And with COVID, we haven't been able to have a Hall of Fame dinner for a while, so to have everyone here in person is nice to see some of you again, and in person, not just over Zoom, which is nice. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce our immediate past president, but also our Hall of Fame chairman and your master of ceremonies tonight, Joe Enright. Joe?
Good evening to everybody. Wow, what a great turnout. This is terrific. We had hoped to have this ceremony at a much earlier date. We had planned on it probably up to 2 years ago. However, we all know that COVID, the pandemic, raised its ugly head. About the only comment I can say is the well-known cliche, good things are worth waiting for. Here we are. So we're finally here, and we'd like to welcome our distinguished honorees and their presenters, our New York State Golf Association committee members, and the many family members, friends, and guests who have all come together here at Irondequoit Country Club to share this wonderful tribute to 5 of New York State's most distinguished and accomplished competitive golfers and contributors to the game, all who have earned immortality as part of New York's rich golf heritage. First, for the benefit of many people who don't know what's going on, let's give you a little background about the New York State Golf Association Hall of Fame, which was officially established in November of 2012. Although several regional golf associations had their own halls, which recognized local service and regional accomplishments, there existed nothing on a statewide level. What the Hall's founders saw was a glaring need for a Hall of Fame that would recognize the entire state's finest amateur and professional competitive golfers, as well as those individuals statewide who have made outstanding contributions to the game of golf. Some people ask, so how do you get in? The Hall of Fame induction criteria are simple. A nominee must have a relationship to New York State, either by birth or residence, or their accomplishments must have brought a claim to New York State. All must have demonstrated their love of the game, and this is reflected in their competitive golf career as an amateur, professional, or even both, or their well-documented career as a golf teacher, coach, or mentor, or their long history of volunteerism to the game of golf in New York or to the organizations that administer and promote golf in the state. Or they have widely recognized contributions and unique impact on golf in New York State in such fields as architecture, journalism, and equipment design. This year, our Hall of Fame selection committee consisted of 7 voting members plus 1 advisory New York State Golf Association staff member. Committee members are selected from different regions of the state and provide a broad perspective of golf knowledge. Besides myself, I'm from Western New York, outside Buffalo. Members who are present this evening are our staff representative, Andrew Hickey, who everybody knows. He's a non-voting member. Dick Galvin of Rochester. Doug Berger, currently of Chautauqua, but for many years deeply involved with the Long Island and Metropolitan Golf Associations. And also Hall of Fame member Tom Reedy from Elmira. We have a couple that haven't been able to attend. Matt Clark from the Capital Region, our historian and the guy I call the human Google search engine. John Blaine from Hamilton. John couldn't make it tonight. As well as Marcy Bevilacqua from Buffalo. And they're the 7 of us, combined with Andrew, are the ones that review everything, and then we do all kinds of secret ballots and all that kind of thing to get it taken care of. And afterwards, after this evening, there will probably be about 20 or 30 people come, oh, why isn't this person in? Why isn't this person in? And ultimately, if they're deserving, they will be. You can't do them all at once, obviously. The ultimate goal of the Hall of Fame is to enshrine a broad spectrum of candidates representing the aforementioned criteria and hailing from a wide ranging regions of our state. We have 21 past inductees. Of those, 15 are tournament competitors, That include Don Allen from Rochester, Bill Tryon of Elmira, Ray Billows of Poughkeepsie, John Konsek and Lancey Smith from Buffalo, Alan Foster, and Ginny Allen of Syracuse, Willie Ternessa of Poughkeepsie, and Marianne Whitman-Levins, all of whom solely competed as amateurs. 4 others that are in the hall combined amateur excellence with professional golf. That includes Sam Rosetta from Rochester, well known, from CCR. He had a distinguished amateur career before moving to the PGA as a competitor and a longtime teaching pro. John Baldwin of New York City, a top national and international amateur who went to the PGA Tour and then into golf administration. Dottie Pepper of Saratoga, who was the New York State Amateur Champion before moving on to a terrific LPGA and golf broadcasting career. And Joey Sindelar, a longtime PGA Tour and Senior Tour professional. Remaining 2 competitors everybody knew, Walter Hagen and Gene Sarazen, were very famous world-class professionals already enshrined in the World Golf Hall of Fame. And then additionally, 2 other previous inductees have been selfless longtime volunteers and mentors to many people in golf in New York. The late Betty Diehl, who lived northwest of Rome in Blossvale, and Tom Reedy, who I mentioned earlier of Elmira. Tom is a previous Hall of Fame member. And Tom, would you please stand up and take a little bow? Thank you. And I think people, when you deal with volunteers, can't possibly imagine how much work they put in. The remaining 4 who were enshrined included Grantland Rice, a renowned golf journalist who lived in Long Island, Fred Box, an invaluable golf historian from Elmira, and Walter Travis and Donald Ross. In Rochester, everybody knows their names, both architects of world-famous golf course designs found throughout New York State. Now, I've always maintained, part of the privilege and honor of being a selection committee member is researching the many worthy candidates and learning more about their accomplishments and contributions to golf. This is especially true for those whose fame might be more regional, but nevertheless truly worthy of statewide recognition. This is the Hall's 6th induction class. And this year, the Hall of Fame will induct 5 more outstanding competitors and contributors. While most golf enthusiasts know a lot about Jeff Sluman's and Terry Diehl's professional accomplishments, they may not know what terrific amateur careers they both had before turning professional. And the late Roslyn Cookie Berger established a benchmark collegiate and amateur resume as an accomplished women golfer in Florida and in both the Metropolitan Golf Association and the Buffalo District Golf Association. Bob Biviano personified the dedicated volunteer whose contributions to golf rules education and golf administration at many competitive levels serves as a model for volunteers today. And we marvel at the resume of Gene Trainor, who initially competed in Rochester district competitions, then moved on to successful statewide competitions and topped off her career with qualifying for 13 USGA tournaments. Gene was also actively involved with enhancing junior golf for girls in New York State. I can speak for myself, but no doubt, including myself, I'm certain that all of our Hall of Fame selection committee members are truly humbled to be part of recognizing these great competitors and contributors. And what essential characteristic do this year's inductees share with all of our previous inductees? From what our research has gathered, they've all demonstrated an unrelenting love of the game of golf and have combined that with tremendous talent plus the dedication to work hard and realize their potential. It is most fitting that Roslyn Cookie Swift-Berger, Bob Biviano, Terry Diehl, Jeff Sluman, and Gene Ramaker Trainor now take their place for all time among their peers as New York State Golf Hall of Famers. Now, presenting and accepting our first award for our first honoree, the late Cookie Berger, we welcome our Hall of Fame Induction Committee member and New York State Golf Association Assistant Executive Director, Andrew Hickey. Andrew?
Thank you, Joe. Bear with me, my best work is done behind the scenes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be able to introduce Roslyn Cookie Swift-Berger as a member of the New York State Golf Association's Hall of Fame here tonight. Cookie was a legendary golfer in the Western New York community, but she wasn't native to the region. She grew up about 400 miles to the southeast in Great Neck, Long Island, where her family belonged to a small course, you might have heard of it, called Glen Oaks Club. It's not the Glen Oaks Club that just hosts the Northern Trust, that's a newer course, it was the one before that. Now when Cookie decided to take up the game of golf, a little later in life, at the age of 17 in 1947, her father insisted that she hone her skills on the range under the tutelage of the golf professional before she was allowed onto the golf course. A little unusual. But the approach clearly worked for Cookie, who at 5 feet 5 inches and 110 pounds needed to develop a tempo that sports writers would often credit for her long driving distance. And while she would just play 3 18-hole rounds that first year, one of those rounds earned her the title of the Women's Metropolitan Golf Association Junior Amateur Championship. The exposure from that win brought with it the attention of college golf programs. She accepted an offer to play at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida in 1949. Now the rising star could play and practice year-round. Now, Cookie's dominance on the women's amateur golf scene didn't really begin until she graduated in 1953. That's when she won 3 individual majors in the same season. The Women's Metropolitan Golf Association title at Metropolis, the Women's Long Island Golf Association Championship at Nassau Country Club, and then the New York State Women's Amateur Championship at Hempstead. She was the first woman to hold this triple crown in the same year. Now, in the spring of 1954, that next year, she married Maxon Berger, and the two honeymooned in California and Hawaii for 2 months. It's a pretty good time at that, Dan. They then moved to their new home in Eggertsville, Buffalo, and Cookie wasted no time introducing herself to her local competition, winning that year's Women's Buffalo District Golf Association and Women's Golf Association of Western New York individual titles. I bet those golfers didn't see that coming. Cookie continued her winning ways from 1955 through 1967. The Bergers joined Westwood Country Club, which today is no longer with us, where Cookie won 9 consecutive club championships. She won a total of 7 WBDGA and 8 Women's Golf Association of Western New York individual titles. After her 1966 win, the Women's Golf Association of Western New York said, "That's enough, please stop." Seriously though, they retired the individual trophy to Cookie, who in turn donated a new one in her name, and that was the last that she played. And after winning her 9th and final club championship that year, she also retired to allow new golfers an opportunity to win. Cookie's final major came in 1967 at the New York State Women's Amateur Championship at Park Country Club in her new adopted hometown, 20 years after she took up the sport of golf on the driving range at Glen Oaks. In an article, she said of her opponents, "These 18 and 19-year-olds like Mary Dwyer, who she played in that final, are much better than the kids years ago. Today they play in all the major tournaments and practice day after day. They're so much stronger too." Now, as a golf administrator, I hear that all the time for our mid-ams and seniors, so I had to chuckle at this, but you guys might not find that funny. You can discern from the sentiment she shared in that article and her stepping aside from competing at local tournaments that a transition was underway in her golfing career at this point. Cookie had played in numerous U.S. Opens and amateurs, having some success. She made the cut at the 1957 U.S. Women's Open, finishing 31st. She actually qualified for 8 U.S. Women's Amateurs, advancing to match play an impressive 7 times, with her best finish coming in 1954 when she made it to the quarterfinals. But after that 1967 New York State Women's Amateur win, Cookie was asked to join the USGA as a committee member on the Women's Committee. She served in this important capacity, promoting women's golf at the national level for 2 years, in 1968 and 1969. Cookie was inducted into the Western New York PGA Hall of Fame in 2000, at that time just one of a handful of amateurs in that body. And in 2002, she was inducted into the Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame. And we are honored to have her now as part of the New York State Golf Association Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I just get humbled just hearing this stuff. I mean, unbelievable. Presenting our second inductee this evening, who's the late Biviano, is Bob's longtime friend, New York State Golf Association past president, and member of this year's Hall of Fame Selection Committee. Dick Galvin from Rochester will present the Hall of Fame plaque to Bob's widow, Doreen Biviano. Dick?
Good evening. I've always called Bob Biviano, his nickname was Beaver, and based on his name Biviano, I believe. But Beaver was a high school teacher, a high school coach, and a high school drama director. I first met Bob in the early 80s when I played at Ontario Golf Club. And then when I joined the club in '83, he and I became good friends. For the next 20 years or so, he tried to talk me into helping out with the State Golf Association, which I said, I don't have time, I work during the summer. And he said, well, you've got to keep doing it. Finally, in 2005, I retired. And Bob was going to become president that fall, 2005. And he got me to go to a tournament where I said I don't know that much about the rules, so he and I went to a hole. The tournament happened to be at Ontario Golf Club that year, but I knew the course well. But in fact, I knew parts of the courses that most of those players never saw. But I went to the hole I assigned to, and he went with me. He helped me. There were a few rulings that day, and he did the rulings, and I observed. The next day, he had me do the rulings, and he observed. Bob was my mentor, and he was a wonderful rules official. He was one of those people. If we had cell phones back then, actually we had radios. Many people would call Bob on the radio and say, "Okay, what's the rule?" Bob would, without turning to a book, would say, "Well, on page 47 of the rule book." Rule 17-1C, it says, and he would quote it exactly. He had memorized the book. I often think about what happened a couple of years ago with the rules, that if Bob were still alive, he would have been crushed, because he would have had to relearn the entire rule book. But he was an expert at it. I was lucky enough to belong to a club with two of the best rules officials in the state. Wilson Fitch was also a member of the club. I would sit down for lunch with Bob and Wilson and just listen to them talk about the rules. And that's how I learned the rules, really. But not just that. Bob was a Renaissance man. He was a theater person. Golf was his love, but he was also a theater person. He directed every play at Wayne Central High School. He, for many, many years, I don't know the number, 20-some years, and he even came back and directed a play after he retired. He was so important that the principal and I talked him into coming back. But he directed and produced plays. And in '89, I joined him for the play that year. And I was technical director, sound and lights. And he and I would sit down after rehearsals and smoke a cigarette, which I luckily no longer do. But we would smoke a cigarette and go over the set, the thoughts about the show. I was a sounding board, and it was just a wonderful experience for me. And in fact, when they made smoking illegal in the schools, we used to go on the roof. But Bob was one of those people that could find humor everywhere. Whenever there was a serious situation, either at the golf course or at school, he would find a way to get people to smile. I only recall one incident where he lost it, and that was at Oneonta Country Club, and a young man decided to become a bad player, and Bob gave him a good talking to. But Bob loved the junior tournaments. He loved the men's tournaments, and he didn't see rules as as hurting players. He found rules as a way to help players have a better experience with the game. He liked to teach it. Whenever there was a ruling, he felt he was teaching someone the rules about the game. And every time he taught one person, that person would spread it to others around the state as they played. So he was just a wonderful mentor, a wonderful person. Sadly, he died way too young, but he left a legacy that I think we can all be proud of, and I was really proud to know him. Proud to have. Tom Reedy, a Hall of Famer, once said to me, "Boy, I miss Beaver," and that was the way we all felt. He was such an important part, especially at tournaments, that we missed him then. We still miss him. So I guess that's it. By the way, I just found out I was going to make this presentation at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I've been playing it by ear as I was thinking about it, but hopefully I did a decent job honoring Bob. And now I'd like to invite Doreen to come up and see.
I'd offer my thanks to Dick and Doreen, and add to his comment too. Bob was a mentor of mine too as well, getting involved here with rules officiating about 13, 14 years ago. Amazing guy. Now to present the information and induction about our late inductee, Jean Ramaker Trainor, I'm pleased to introduce Jane Gorsline, who will present Jean's plaque to Jean's daughter, Ann Ralph. Jane?
Well, it gives me great pleasure to recognize Jean Trainor for induction into our New York State Golf Hall of Fame. I grew up with Ann. We both played at the Country Club of Rochester, so I got lucky enough to have Jean Trainor as my mentor from the time I was about 8 years old. Anyway, as you know from her record, she had a lifetime of winning. And probably her record will never be equaled, at least in my lifetime, I know that. She had a great swing, terrific rhythm, consistency, and always was able to keep the ball in play. She used to say to us juniors when we get a little fast with our swings, just hum the Merry Widow and slow down. And it seemed to work. What many of you may not know, though, was how much she contributed to junior golf. She was a tireless promoter of girls' junior golf and was really responsible for getting the junior girls' golf programs going not only in Rochester, but in New York State and nationally. And she would think nothing of piling 4 of us into her car. I was one of the lucky ones, and Ann, my good friend Ann Ralph, and a couple of others, and off we would go to tournaments. She started out by taking us to the United States Golf Association Junior Girls Championship out in Ohio. And in those days, you didn't have to qualify. You just had to apply. So she was always saying, you've got to get your handicaps down, girls, if you're going to play in these tournaments. So then we went on to play in the New York State women's amateurs. And we played in just about everything that she could find for us to play in. She was determined to make good golfers out of us, and we really did try hard. But for some reason, we never were quite able to achieve her record. We had an awful lot of fun traveling with Jean. She was just such a great sport to take us all to these tournaments that none of our parents would probably have done. But as we got older, even when we were 16, she would let us drive. She would sit in the passenger side and keep her eye on the speedometer. Well, once we got to the tournaments, she always had to kind of keep us in trouble also. But the one tournament I do remember that was so funny, we were all going down to Cooperstown to play in the women's New York State Amateur, staying at the Otesaga Hotel. I guess we were 15 or 16. For some reason, we got wind of some boys at a boys' camp next door to the Otesaga, got wind that these girls were playing in the tournament. So these boys came over after dinner, with a guitar. And we were all sitting outside at the Otesaga singing away when the window opened and Jean yelled out, "Girls, did I bring you down here to party or to play golf? Get back in your room." So we really had a great time going to these tournaments. And as I said, she was always trying to keep us under control. We all loved Jean Trainor. She was such a good sport. She was very gracious, very humble, but always ended up winning. And in fact, I played against Jean and I played against Dan in many of our country club championships. And I think my middle name is runner-up. It was either Jean or Ann that I lost to. Occasionally I might win, but not that often. So I'm just going to not go into anything else about Jean because her record speaks for itself. But we were just lucky to know her. We were lucky to grow up with her. And she encouraged all of us to love the game and to develop our skills as best we could so that we could go into these major tournaments. She also encouraged us to give back to golf. And she was very instrumental on the women's committee for the United States Golf Association. And I ended up being very active in the United States Golf Association with the junior girls. And I think it was all because of Jean Trainor, who had encouraged me. And I just thought my way of giving back was to work with the junior girls. And I was on the junior girls championship committee for a number of years. So hopefully I inherited that love of giving back from Jean Trainor. Well, thank you, Jean. All I can say is you were the greatest mentor and friend for all of us juniors. And we certainly are very grateful to what you gave to us. Whenever I think of Rochester golf, I will always think of Jean Trainor. And then I'd like to turn it over to Ann, her daughter, who will accept this award.
Thank you, Jane, for saying all those nice things about my mom. On behalf of my family, I would like to thank the New York State Golf Association for honoring my mother with this wonderful award. She was an inspiration to me and my friends in our early teens and encouraged us all to pursue our interest in golf and become competitive players. We would never be able to equal her record, but we tried our best and finally became low handicap players, even competing against her. She did, however, win most of the time. She was always a humble and gracious winner who was a great role model for all of us. Thank you again for honoring my mother.
Thanks to both Jane and Ann, and I can attest from some of our research, they've got a great resume themselves. Based on a long career of wide-ranging amateur and professional golf accomplishments, our fourth inductee, Jeff Sluman, may not need very much introduction, especially to those who've been close to him as he grew up, competed, and originally lived in the Rochester area. For Jeff's presenter, I'm pleased to welcome our 2018 Hall of Fame inductee, and a woman who probably needs no other introduction to anyone who has paid any attention to women's golf and golf broadcasting over the past years. I can attest that Dottie's induction in 2018 was definitely a lot of fun. And I'd like to call Dottie up and welcome her with one of my cherished mementos of her induction. Dottie? Lots of those around that induction center.
That was great. Thank you for that. I think. So 2 weeks ago, I opened an email from the State Golf Association. And the announcement is in there for this year's Hall of Fame class. And sure enough, there's my good friend Jeff Sluman on the list. So my original plan was to kind of blow in here from kind of sit in the corner, told Ben Wilson I was coming. And I was just going to be here kind of in the support mode. But after a text congratulating Slu, within about 15 minutes, I was instead introducing him. because whomever, it was Doug King or Tom O'Brien, I now know it to be Tom O'Brien, had nearly thrown up at the thought of speaking in public. So here, so as I told Slu, I'll only do it if we get some really good stories from your early days. And it needs to be more like a roast than a funeral, so buckle up. And the stories started to flow, not just from Tom and Doug, but from even Slu himself. He can be a little self-deprecating if you know him. So Doug describes Slu as not the class clown, but the class comedian. You know, the quiet kid who sits behind you in class, whispers something awful in your ear, you laugh, and you get in trouble with the teacher. Doug, you're not alone. He's done it to me during mixed team tournament. And Jeff's downright lousy at disguising his devious smile when he's up to no good, and his subjects are utterly defenseless. So let's go back to the 1974 junior prom. Jeff teed this one up, but the boys finished it. So Jeff worked up all of his courage to ask a beautiful freshman, Claire Vandenberg, to be his date. Well, days turned into weeks, and still no response from Claire. To this day, no response from Claire. Does anyone in this room know Claire? So Slu ended up going with another beautiful girl named Julie. Well, Julie wore a very sharp, bright yellow dress to the prom and insisted Jeff wear the same color tuxedo. So imagine, if you will, Tweety Bird. Jeff's reddish hair, minus today's head cookie, of course, and that yellow tux, needless to say, that was a one and done for them. Tom O'Brien's known Jeff since the 7th grade and caddied for him a bunch in his early days and as recently as last year. Probably not your forte, Tom. He lost his card the first year. But your email did reinforce the legend of Slu for me. 4 hours on the range, and Jeff's hit 20 balls because he's holding court. And going to the locker room, well, that's like saying, I'll be right out, when in Jeff's world, that means I'll be back in 2 hours, grab a comfortable seat in the shade, and we'll get to it eventually. Jeff's journey, golf journey, was very much, as you know, blue collar. Hit balls wherever he could, Tom often with him with his baseball mitt, catching wedges for hours. His start with college golf at Tennessee Tech ended with a disbanded program, a return home to junior college here, and then walked on at Florida State, where he's now a member of their Hall of Fame. No U.S. feeder tour for Jeffrey. It was onto the Asian tour in places like Calcutta, covering his nose and mouth in the shower because you didn't want the water to get in your body, and armed guards on golf courses with automatic weapons. Sounds a lot like our friends in Live Golf, doesn't it? But let it be known that Jeff Sluman is known for his loyalty. When Tom was getting married in 1980, Jeff found a way to come back from the Asian tour. And he didn't just come back from the wedding, he spent their honeymoon with them. Correct. Never questioned Jeffrey's loyalty. So we know that Jeff ended up marrying his Linda, a spitfire and brilliant oncologist who is every bit as feisty and funny as Jeff. When I asked Davis Love III for any good nuggets he had on Jeff during his time as President's Cup and Ryder Cup assistant captains, and there were a lot of them, he said he didn't have any on Jeff, but only Linda. So another one of Jeff's caddies, Englishman Mark Cheney, good friend, witty as Jeff, but maybe a little more cynical and a touch more salty, shared this story about a day at the Western Open at Cog Hill when Linda showed up at the end of the round. Jeff put on a long game clinic all day, hit it 5 to 10 feet all day long, but couldn't putt it in the ocean from the beach. Missed every putt, shot even par. And Linda said, Jeff, what happened? Jeff said, I couldn't make a putt. And Linda says, well, maybe hit it closer. To which Slu turned to her steaming and said, you stick to curing cancer and I'll stick to playing golf. So finally, back to Davis Love. Slu's been a mentor to a lot of young players, rookies coming on tour over the years. And including Davis, who still does every deal he does by the Sluman rule. And the Sluman rule for the PGA Tour player goes like this. 1, never again pay retail for equipment or anything related to your job. 2, if you absolutely have to have that, get it at a discount, wholesale preferably. 3, your best scenario is always get it for free and make them pay you for using it. When I talked to Davis, he still couldn't stop laughing, and he got that advice how many decades ago. So we have known Jeffrey since becoming partners in 1995 at the JCPenney Mixed Team Classic, and I'd always followed his career because of his New York roots, the way he took the tough road in pursuit of his golf dreams, how he played other sports in addition to golf. Do not go to a bowling alley with Jeff Sluman. And he just kind of did things the right way. Turns out we had loads in common. Dogs. Now, it doesn't take much for Jeff to have a dog that's taller than he has, but he does have an affinity for large dogs. Fun cars. We love to, tell old golf stories about those who came before us, rules discussions, great wine shopping. In fact, the first 2 years we played in the JCPenney Classic, I know we spent more at B21 Wine Warehouse in Tarpon Springs than we did actually winning on the golf course. And we took every case to the tournament office, to the director, and told him it was olive oil so he could ship it home for us. We also had a work hard, play hard ethic. And I think that's attitude that has cemented a treasured friendship. So Jeffrey, welcome to the hall.
That wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, Dottie. First of all, I'm looking at the program here, and the bowl haircut. Now I understand why Claire never got back to me. She lost my number before I even had a number. All kidding aside, I'm not going to spend 29 plus minutes and break the record here of Mr. Dottie Allen, but really and truly a great day for me and to be in the Hall of Fame, and more importantly to be inducted with Terry. I watched you growing up. You were just a little older than me that I really never got to cross paths with you, but I followed your career. Your great families here. There's probably, looks like about 6 tables of Diehl's here. But, I watched it, and I was just reminded by Tom, like one of my very first tour events, we happened to be flying down together, and I was in 34A, and Terry was in 2A, and somehow you finagled your way to get me upgraded to first class. So you were always kind of looking out for me, and when I first started the tour, you were great to me, and wanted to make sure I got started as well as I could, and I appreciate that. You always want to thank, obviously, my parents, my 2 brothers who are down in Florida, couldn't make it. Tom O'Brien, Doug King, my buddies from high school. Lovely Monica, filming this, I may add. But, golf has been so good to me, and it's not about how I played or whatever, but just the people I met. From Dottie, we've laughed, cried, we've done so many things together. The friends I've made on tour, and they'll always be friends. You compete hard against them. You're not necessarily rooting for them, but you're just kind of rooting for yourself to maybe play a little better than them. You're not really pulling against them. It's just been a wonderful career. I'm just turned 65. I don't know how much longer I have left. Maybe a year or two at the most. But it's great. I mean, what I would say to everybody here, obviously I'm looking around to your children, grandchildren, maybe some great-grandchildren. All I can say is tell them to dream and dream big. You never know what can happen. I mean, I'm the living embodiment of that, and never really thought I'd be up here talking about my golf career or what being inducted into here, Oak Hill, Florida State, and stuff like that. But very, very meaningful for me, and thank you very much. Have a great night.
It keeps getting better and better. These guys are amazing. Our fifth presenter for inductee Terry Diehl should need no extended introduction to the folks here at beautiful Irondequoit Country Club, other than to introduce Irondequoit's own head golf professional, Mr. Ben Wilson.
Congratulations, Terry. Thanks. What a great crowd. My name is Ben Wilson. As they said, I am the head golf professional here at Irondequoit Country Club. I'm honored to be here this evening, surrounded by friends, colleagues, stewards of the game here from the New York State Golf Association. Without the support of this organization and its members, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight celebrating all of these wonderful inductees. So we're glad everybody's here. Certainly glad we're having you here at Irondequoit. So great to be here this evening. Tonight's Hall of Fame inductee is no stranger to the winner's circle. His junior, collegiate, and professional playing career is nothing short of extraordinary. Now, I have to tell you, they only said talk for 5 minutes, so I had to condense some of these victories. So here's a few, though, and they're quite impressive. His amateur victories include, but are not limited to, multiple RDGA and New York State Golf Association junior titles. He was two-time New York State Golf Association sub-junior champion in 63 and 64, three-time RDGA junior amateur champion, 1965 through 1967, and the 1966 New York State Golf Association junior amateur champion. This gentleman also earned medalist honors in the 1967 Junior International Masters Tournament. He's held 2 Monroe Invitational Individual Championships, 2 Country Club of Rochester Invitational Individual titles, and qualified as an amateur for the U.S. Open in 1970 held at Hazeltine. That's pretty great. His collegiate career was spent at the University of Georgia, where in 1969, during his sophomore year, he earned All-American Honorable Mention, finished second in the NCAA Individual Championship. He rounded out his collegiate career, being named captain of the University of Georgia golf team on his senior year. Turning professional in 1973 and earning his PGA Tour card in 1974, he quickly made the jump to the winner's circle, right where he was very comfortable, claiming victory in 1974 at the Texas Open. Tonight's honoree went on to participate in 262 PGA Tour events, earning 1 win, 2 second-place finishes, 4 third-place finishes, 23 top 10 finishes, and made over 150 cuts while on tour, including a tie for 7th at the 1977 U.S. Open, tie for 32nd at the 1978 Masters, tie for 10th at the 1980 PGA Championship. Right over there. Well done. His accomplishments have allowed him to be awarded with a lifetime membership to the PGA Tour. I know that because I have one of those money clips that he gave me. But if you know Terry, there was no money in it. It was just Although he certainly made his mark as a player, none of his achievements are more important than his family. With the loving support of his wife, Laura, daughter, Alex, 4 sons, Matt, John, Graham, and Colin, and 7 grandchildren, which I think are all here tonight, he continues his passion for life by being a role model for his family, always available for them with advice, encouragement, love, and occasionally a little bit of sarcasm. Today, this individual spends his spring and summer in Rochester as a teaching professional here at Irondequoit Country Club. He also assists with the golf operation and enjoys playing golf with the ICC membership. He has conducted his transition from tour player to club professional with the utmost grace, dignity, and professionalism. We at Irondequoit Country Club are so grateful for his contributions to our club and for his commitment to help grow the game we all love so much. Makes me even more proud that I have the honor of calling this individual my friend, colleague, and mentor. If there is a hall of fame for individuals that make it their business to help others while expecting nothing in return, if there is a hall of fame for someone who is loyal, honest, generous, caring, considerate, trustworthy, and selfless, and sarcastic, this gentleman would be first on the list. He would be the first inductee, no problem. And now it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you the 2022 New York State Golf Association Hall of Fame member, Mr. Terry Diehl.
I was confused. Who was he talking about? But, you know, as Joe mentioned, you know, I'm truly honored and humbled to be up here tonight. And, you know, it's just, you know, it's quite an honor. And I'm sitting here, you know, as Lou said, you know, we won a lot of things. And, you know, my career is my career, but, you know, it's like, I knew something was up. My wife's nephews were playing down at Skinny Atlas, and Gavin Hall won this tournament. And they're like, Uncle Terry, you're on the cover of the New York State Magazine. I'm going, what? I said, what did I do? And they go like, you know, they say that you're the only guy in history that's won the boys, the men's, and the junior titles. I said, really? I said, I didn't know that. And I told Gavin, I said, just because he hasn't played in about all, that's all. Just hadn't won them yet. So I wanted to thank Joe and all the people here, Andrew and all the other people in New York State Golf Association for putting this event on. It's been wonderful. You know, and I sit here, I think about all the people that have kind of come before me to help make this happen. You know, and I can't come to Irondequoit. You know, I won my first RDGA tournament here when I was 13 years old. And I come to Irondequoit, and if you recall, the old pro shop was up where the bag room is now. And I can't come here without thinking about Frank Camissa. And how many people do you know? I know 2 men who patterned their lives after Frank, who wanted to be just like him when they grew up. And one's one of the Hall inductees, Sam Rosado. I think about all the people that have helped me in my golf career. I think about Sam. I think about Claude Harmon. I think about Craig Harmon. I think about Ken Venturi and numerous others. In fact, when I was out here on the first tee, I brought a training club with me that Gene Sarazen gave me. I used to play with him down in Marco. And he was this crusty little guy, and he had everybody intimidated. But I said, Gene, I said, you know, just give me 5 minutes. I'll clear my deck, and whatever you want to do, I'll play golf with you anytime you want to play. And he and I became pretty good friends. And it's one of the clubs that I saved. And it was in the storage area, a lot of my trophies. But the line of the night, you know, they asked us to drop some things off, scrapbooks and old trophies and stuff. But the line of the night is I'm dropping the stuff off, and there's a fellow in here helping Alan Cohen, the general manager here at Irondequoit, get the room set up. And he looks down at one of the trophies and says, 1967, oh my God, how old is this stuff? And I said, hey, pal, just look at me. But you know, it's easy to like Sluman. He's always been a real good man. He grew up with my cousin, Corky Root, and I always, paid attention to these young guys coming up too. And he's had a great long career, but the timing was different when he came along and when I was playing. My last year on a tour was 1983. There was no senior tour. It didn't exist. But fortunately, if you read the bio, I worked at the tour headquarters, and myself and an intern, a guy that the boys know, a guy named Barney Hinkle, who is Lon Hinkle's younger brother. He and I did the first 5-year business plan for the senior tour. And that was like probably the finest sports event that happened in the 80s. So guys my age, you had to kind of figure out what you're going to do. Either be a club pro or whatever, and I, had a business career. But there was one thing that Joe was talking about, that a lot of people exceed their potential. Well, I won what I did, but I didn't exceed my potential. And it was a point in my career where I kind of, all I can tell you is that my night game outplayed my day game. Okay? But when I look out in the crowd at my friends, my family, I've had the greatest mulligan a guy could ever have. So those of you who know me, you know what I'm talking about. You too, man. And, when I look out, I'm not going to remember my, junior amateur trophy, or actually SLU's PGA is pretty cool. If I'm going to remember the people that showed up, you're the people that are making this very special. For me, I look around, I'm going like, everybody has something to do. You got better things to do on a Tuesday night than to come out and watch a couple old guys get inducted in some, Hall of Fame. It's very nice of you. I know that. And I really appreciate it. But even more importantly, I've got my family. They all showed up. Now that's really special. So when you go home tonight, on your knees, be grateful for what you have. Because I certainly am. Thanks.
Comment. We can read a lot of stuff in researching, and it's somewhat dry. But an evening like this, where we have presenters and hopefully some living inductees, but even with the families of the deceased too, there's a warmth that comes through that we can't get by reading something in a Google search or something like that. I am so appreciative to all of our presenters, Andrew Hickey, Dick Galvin, Jane Gorsline, Dottie Pepper, and Ben Wilson. They offered something that we just can't get, as I said, from reading. And I'm deeply indebted to them for helping make our evening memorable. And of course, congratulations to our recipients. They come off as a pretty humble group, but they wouldn't be getting inducted into the Hall of Fame if they didn't fully deserve it. So I believe I speak for everyone here when I say what an honor it is here to be with you all, whether it be in body or spirit, and to share with you these well-deserved inductions. And before I close, I also want to thank our staff. We have a wonderful staff at New York State Golf Association, most of whom are sitting over there, plus Andrew and Bill. And they set everything up, and they're without parallel anywhere. I want to congratulate them and thank them for that. Now, for a couple final closing remarks, I bring up a little more. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And just to reiterate what he said, we couldn't do this without our great staff of the New York State Golf Association, Dan Thompson over here handling our communications with his headphones. Working hard. Andrew Hickey worked so hard on this with the Hall of Fame with Joe Enright. But most importantly, we have the one who's been in charge of putting this whole thing together back there, Deb Spillman. She's hiding in the back. She did make me alphabetize all of the name tags, and my intern revolted today and said he was not going to alphabetize all the deals. I made him do it, and I'm going to buy him an extra vodka tonic tonight for his help. So it's a pleasure to have all of you here. Like I said at the beginning, thanks to the Hall of Fame committee, Joe Enright, his crew, all the inductees, all of my committee that came out today for the New York State Golf Association, and we'd like to wish everyone a good night, travel safely, and thank you for coming. Thank you.